Have you ever looked at a huge mountain of scripts on your desk and you wish they would mark themselves? Have you ever asked yourself whether students actually take any notice of the feedback that you write on these scripts? Or even worse, have you ever wondered what the hell is the purpose of these assessments that you're doing? To whose benefit are you doing them? Well, if you just answered one of these questions with yes, maybe I can provide you with a different way of doing assessments. My name is Peter Klapper from the University of Kent at the School of Biosciences, and I want to introduce you to what I call assessments for learning, or short A4L. Now, I teach predominantly numeracy skills to undergraduate students in a bioscience context. And I asked myself these questions. And I thought maybe there is a different way of how we can assess students. So, in a traditional assessment, what we usually have are learning outcomes. So we have learning outcomes or topics, learning outcome 1, 2, 3. And in a traditional assessments, we give the students a test, we do the assessment, we collect the test. The test can be online or in class, paper-based. We collect the assessments and then the marking starts. We do the marking, we provide feedback, and we give a grade. Well, one of the problems is that there is a delay between the assessment, when the student do the actual test, and when they receive the feedback. It can be hours, days, sometimes weeks, depending on how many assessments we have. And then there's the question, do the students actually take notice of the feedback? We might write reams and reams of feedback, but do the students take notice of what we write? And then do the students apply the feedback? Do they actually go back and say, right, I didn't do very well in this particular calculation. I might not have achieved the learning outcome, so I have to relearn it. But then how do we know that they actually have done it? So we don't know whether they have achieved the learning outcome after we have given them the feedback. So what happens in the assessment for learning? So here is the scheme for the A4L. We again have learning outcomes and we do the assessment. But you notice there is a bit missing. There is no feedback. There are no grades. What happened? Well, actually, everything happens in this assessment. So everything is included in this assessment. Feedback, etc., etc. How does it work actually? Let's look at it. So we are doing a learning outcome which has been taught, and now in an online assessment, it will be evaluated whether the student has achieved the learning outcome. And there are two potential outcomes. The student has achieved the learning outcome, or they have not achieved the learning outcome. So let's assume they have not achieved the learning outcome. They will get immediate feedback through the assessment, and they will go back to the question, to the initial question, and repeat it, so they have a chance to redeem themselves. And they can do that as often as they like until they get the question right. And only if they get the question right, they can move on to the next level. This is a concept that is very common in gaming, for example, and everybody who played Candy Crush Saga knows that you get stuck on one level, and only if you learn the real trick, you can move on to the next. And then you move on to the next question, and the same process repeats itself. It will be evaluated whether the student actually has achieved the learning outcome. If no, immediate feedback, and repeat the question again and see whether you can do it. And if they can, they level up to the next question, and so on and so forth. And eventually they will have achieved all the learning outcomes, and I'm sure they have achieved them, because if they end up here, they have done the learning outcomes. So immediate feedback, and they can only progress to the next level once they've mastered the current level. But once they've done it, they have achieved the learning outcome. So let's play and see how this works in practice. Okay, let's do the assessment. So when the student goes to the assessment, they are greeted by a general introduction, what this is all about, and then we can get started. And the student has two options here. So they are ready for the questions, or they can start off with watching some tutorials. Let's go to the watch some tutorials. So here I've prepared some YouTube videos which are relevant to the task, and the student can look at them, and when they feel ready, they can move on to the first question. So here's the first question. I'm thinking of a number. When I add 16 to this number, I will get 26. What number was I'm thinking of? It's a very simple example. Here's a text box, and the student then can check whether they got it right. So let's say they can also go back to watch a tutorial about this, and they go back. What you notice, the numbers in the questions have changed. So when I add 13 to this number, I will get 14. Let's do a guess. Let's say maybe this is, the number is 5. Okay, obviously number is not right, but now they check their answer. And, oh, I'm sorry, your answer was not correct. The number that I was thinking of was actually 1. So they get the correct number here. So try again, or watch a tutorial, which they would be directed to the tutorial. So let's try again. And again, we get another number because these numbers are generated through a random number generator in the program. So when I add 18 to this number, I get 23. Well, I think I can do that. Let's see whether 5 is the correct answer. Yes, and here we get immediate feedback. Well done. So now we can move on to the next level, to question number 2. I'm thinking of a number. When I multiply that number by 6, I will get 48. And again, I can try and guess, or I can go to a tutorial. So in this case, I would say the number is 8. Let's see if that is the right number. Check your answer. Yes, great job. You got it right. Well done. Go to question number 3. So again, it's immediate feedback, and the student sees, yes, I've got it right. So go to question 3. I'm thinking of a number, and here it gets a little bit more complex. When I add 18 to this number and then multiply the result by 11, I get 242. And this is, of course, a little bit more tricky. So let's say the number is, say, 10. Let's see if I got this right. Oh no, I didn't get it right. So again, I can watch a tutorial, or I can try again. When I add 10 to this number, and you see, again, the numbers have changed. When I add 10 to this number and multiply that result by 9, I will get 144. So let's see what this number might be. So 144 divided by 9, that is 16. So the unknown number plus 10 gives me 16. So the unknown number would be 6. Let's see if this is correct. Check the answer. Yes, I got it right. And now I have reached the end of the test, and what I want the student to do is now record a form and record the success. So here a Google form will open. So my name, so that would be Peter, and the login details, that is just for internal purposes, so that would be PK11 Kent, and I submit the form. Voila, the form has been submitted, and what we can do is we can now check whether the submission has been successful, and voila, timestamp, my name and my login has been recorded in my spreadsheet that I have access to, and that is the record that the student has actually completed the assessment. Now we have seen how this principle works. So what is the workflow and the software that I use for this program? So first of all, one has to design the assessment, and there is a little bit of thought that has to go into the assignment. What are the learning outcomes that I want to produce? And do I want to include, for example, video tutorial? Do I want to actually give the student the correct answer and then rely that they can work backwards? Or am I really mean? Do I not want to provide extensive feedback, etc., etc.? So that's the design, and I need to be clear about what I want to achieve. Then the next step is to write the assessment, and for that I use a program called Twine. This is freeware, a free and open source. One can download it from twinery.org. It's available for Mac and PC. It has a visual graphic interface. We can start with a block, and there are different what is called passages. And for this 3-question assessment that I just showed, the passage sections would look like that. And what is important to see is that it is not just a linear process. There are sort of going arrows back. So the student, for example, answers the question. They can go to a tutorial. They can go back to that question. They check whether it's the right one. And from the check, they can watch the tutorial. They can go back or the program will send them back if the answer was incorrect, and so on and so forth. So important is that this assessment is not linear, it is branched, but eventually it will all come out to, it will end and terminate into the final submission, the Google form that I showed. How do I deploy this assessment? There are different ways of deploying such an assessment. The Twine program allows me to save everything as an HTML file, so I can, in theory, import it into Moodle or Blackboard or any other learning management system. I prefer an indie platform which is specifically designed for gaming, because that is what it is. It's a game on itch.io, but any other platform that accepts HTML file will be absolutely fine. And the collection of the submissions is just simply through Google Forms. Now, I know that people say, oh, this looks rather complicated, and there is a certain investment, an upfront investment, because one has to learn the syntax of Twine. But here is, for example, what question 1 looks like. And as we can see, it's not really very complicated. At the key of the question, there is a random number generator, and there are variables here. This number generator produces numbers, and these numbers then are appear in the question. So once one gets to grips with these, with the syntax, which is fairly simple, and there are lots of YouTube tutorials, and a little bit of HTML, but not really extensive. it is very easy to write these questions, and once one has written such a question, then it's just a matter of copy paste and put them into the different parts. So there is a little bit of upfront investment in terms of learning it and designing the assessment, but once the assessment has been designed, it can be deployed as many times as one would like, and there is no further marking involved or feedback writing, because the program gives the feedback and all I need to do is collect the submission forms in Google Forms. Now, what did the students think about it? So I just leave you with these comments from the students, and I think, to be perfectly honest, it worked really, really well. The students very much liked it. One of them said it's a little bit frustrating because sometimes I don't provide a lot of feedback. I let them work it out, but in a way, it forces them to figure out what is going on, where they went wrong, and that again is a very important learning process. So I hope this makes sense, and thank you very much for watching.